Hello, Randi Rain here, and once again I'm going to show you my chops at woodworking, and I'm going to make this magic cup, and it's made with your basic everyday woodworking tools. There's no planer, there's no joiner, there's no lathe. It's not that hard, but it is a lot of work, so I better get started. Let me show you. So the wood is locally sourced. It's black walnut. It was cut down on some property out in Rainbow, Texas. Here's a video of the town.
Let's all square dance. Places all. Bow to your corner. Bow to your own.
Now it was rough cut, so I needed to cut it down into strips, and I don't have a planer or a joiner. So to get a good straight cut, I rip a piece of plywood and then just don't move the fence. And then I just tack my wood to the plywood with just a little pin nailer here, and then run it through the table saw, and that will cut me a nice, clean, straight edge. And I do both ends, that way I can rip down a couple of pieces. Then once I have some square stock here, then I can put it back onto my board and cut another straight edge, because all I need is two perpendicular straight edges. Once I have those, I can use that side to rip them down on the table saw. And then I just keep ripping it down, and I just need some strips. And I need to get down to 8 strips of wood. And when I get down to the size, then I need to put an angle on each of the sides here. And they need to be at 22.5 degrees. Once I have them all ripped down, just tape them up with some painter's tape, flip it over, add a lot of wood glue, and then roll it up and then tape it off, and so it's a solid log. So it's in the shape of an octagon, like your stop sign or that movie Chuck Norris was in. So I set that aside to dry, and while that's drying I need to cut the pieces to build a little shuttle. Now the shuttle is going to hold this thing as I cut it down to make it round. So to do that, once it's dry, I can cut the ends flush, get some nice clean ends, so I can add ends back to it. And it's just some pieces of plywood that I've cut down, and I epoxy those onto the ends. Then once the epoxy dries, I can draw a line from, each angle here and roughly get the center so I can drill a hole. It doesn't have to be perfect. So what I'm calling the shuttle is just holds this log, and it has a gap down on the bottom for a track. And the track is just going to be the same 1/2 inch width that the router bit is, and it's going to be laid in a planar fashion with the router bit. So it tracks. So now it can track back and forth. So I can spin the log and I can track it back and forth. And then the first thing to do is just start cutting the high spot. So I can set the router bit at the flushest part of one of the sides of my octagon. And then I'll just take down the corners first to get it semi-round. And I can just slide back and forth, and each pass will take off a little bit of the corners. Then I can move the router bit up a little bit and start spinning it and get in some deep cuts and really start making it round at this point. And then to get it smooth, you can go back and forth and round and back and forth, and eventually it will get smooth. Now there was a lot of grubs in this wood, And so there's some grub holes that are still left, that are still there, and I'm going to leave them. I'm just going to fill them. So I just need to get some sawdust and mix it with some epoxy, and I can fill these holes. And then once it cures, I can cut it back down. And then I'm going to be making 4 cups, so I mark out the center spots of each cup here. And then I cut a 1/2 inch groove, which would be the center of each cup. And then I take some of the epoxy and I add in this yellow pigment, and it's a powder, and it's the powder they make makeup out of and soaps and whatnot. I think it's a type of iron oxide. And I fill those grooves with this epoxy. And then once it's cured, I put it back on, and then on my spots that I have marked here, I now switch out the bit for a 3/8 inch router bit, and I cut a groove that's 3/8 inch, and it removes most of the yellow epoxy that I just put on there, but it's leaving just a little bit. And then I filled that groove with black epoxy, and this is black iron oxide, I know. So epoxy and black iron oxide mixed together, and I fill that groove. And then at this point I put in the 1/8 inch router bit, and I cut an 1/8 inch groove in all of these spots. Once that channel's cleaned out, I can fill it with epoxy mixed with red pigment. And then once that cures, it's back to the router and just smooth it all back down. Go ahead and give the whole thing one more pass and get it nice and smooth. And so at this point I can remove it from the shuttle, and I'm done with the shuttle. And now it's just a little bit of sanding, using pretty rough sandpaper here, just to get it all nice and get the tool marks out of it. And then with the epoxy, I just fill it with CA glue. This is very thin CA glue. It'll just soak in and just makes it harder. And it's going to make it finish better. And so now I can cut down to the cup size. So now it's time to cut the inside of the cups, and to do that, that's a whole nother jig. So to do that, I'm using this 7/8 plywood, I think it is, and I cut a hole that's roughly the size of the cup. Not exactly, it doesn't have to be exact, but pretty close. And then I just split this piece of wood down the center, and with the curve that the saw blade takes out, it should fit snugly around the cup now. And then I'm just going to kind of make some handles on the ends here, and then I fix one down to the router table, and then I make the other one hinge so that you can put the cup in here and close it in and hold it in place. That way I can take the router bit and plunge it up in there and spin the cup. And you have to do it a little bit at a time, and you can't even get all of it. You'll just have to go up halfway and then flip it over and do the other side. And that's how the inside of the cups are made. So now it's time for the bottom. And for this I just cut a strip of wood, and then I'm going to cut it in triangle pieces, once again at 22.5 degrees. Then I'm going to use some epoxy with powdered pigments to kind of glue it together. That way it'll fill in all the gaps. And then tie it up with a string and let it cure. And do that 4 times, and then once they're cured, I can use the table saw to get me a nice flat side with my special little jig here, of course. Then I can find the center and I can mark out the circle, and then just use this sander here and get close to the line. Not all the way, because I have a circle jig cut out that will get me the rest of the way perfectly. And I just use double stick carpet tape and stick it on here. Use a clamp to really mash it down so it'll really stay. And then that way I can use a flush trimming bit on the router table. You want to go backwards at first, and it's kind of hard. You really have to hold it or it'll spin out of control. But you do this to keep it from splintering. And then once you get closer down to where it's going to be flush, then you can go the correct direction, and that'll clean it up nice and clean. At this point, it's best to go ahead and sand the inside of this cup because it's going to be hard to get to from now on. Because to put the bottom on, I need to create a lip in it. And I'm going to use the same router jig. I'm just going to move it over so I can draw a line here and know how to move it over. And so now it's cutting a little bit more into my cups from where it last cut in to make the inside. And then I'm just going to bring it up just a little bit. And that'll create my lip, and I just need to make it fit the right size. So I just keep moving it till it fits nice and snug. Then I'm going to glue the bottom on just using wood glue, but I am going to mix some more sawdust into it to fill the gaps. But I don't want to use epoxy here. I want to use just regular wood glue. That way I can clean the inside, because it's going to get on the inside. If it was epoxy, there's no way I could just clean it up. Once it's dried, I can just use a 1/4 inch round over bit and just kind of knock the edge off the lip of the cup. Then with my disc sander, with my square mounted on it, I can really square off the bottom. And once I have that nice and square to the cup, and then I can go ahead and round over the bottom using a big round over bit. But it's done with 2 passes. And that really exposes a lot of end grain there. So once again, I take epoxy, mix some pigment in with it, and smear it all over this end grain and let that cure. And then it was down to sanding and sanding and more sanding, and then polishing and more polishing and buffing, and it is super smooth now. But also I made bags. And everybody loved the flame bags that I made for the magic wands. Those were the first to go. So I went ahead and used that same material here. And that's why I use the colors on the inlay as well. And these bags aren't cheaply made either. They even have a nice little lining. I mean, just look at that work right there. Even has a drawstring and the little clasp, and that comes with it. But you've seen it be made now. Now you want to see the magic, of course. Well, here you go. So the magic of the magic cup. Notice that there's nothing in my hands. Notice that there's nothing inside the cup. And notice it's also solid, except for the trapdoor I added in there. Over here is the magic ball, and just like the magic wand, the magic ball, it travels right through it as well. And if I can also take this ball and I place it into the hand, give it a tap like this, it vanishes, and of course it ends up underneath the cup. Now of course you want to see this one more time, and I don't blame you. You Watch, here's the cup. Here's the ball. It goes like this, tap, tap, tap. Goes all the way over. Tap, 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 just like that. It vanishes, and there it is. One more time, I'm sure you're saying. Well, even if you're not, still doing it. One more time. Here's the ball. It goes like this. This time, the wand is going to eat it. Watch. A chomp, chomp, chomp. A chomp, chomp, chomp. A chomp, chomp, chomp. It vanishes. Where did it go? Well, in the digestive tract of the wand, I guess, because the only thing underneath the cup is the line. So you see, I have some chops when it comes to woodworking and magic. And if you would like one of these, well, they're for sale. Here's the link. There's a link below. You can click that in the description. And there's also some magic wands left. So there, hurry, go get them. First come, first serve. Not making any more. They come with everything you see to do the trick. Well, anyway, if you like this video, I sure would appreciate a thumbs up. It helps that algorithm thing. And if you just want to see more, the subscribe, you know all that. I want to thank these people here. These are patrons. These are people helping me out. They brought this. They made this happen. So I thank them oh so very much. And if you'd like to help, there's a link below, of course, and there are some perks. And if you want to pick up a chop cup, of course. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. So here's the magic of the magic cup. Notice that there's nothing in my hands. Also notice that there's nothing inside the cup. Notice that the cup is solid, except for that trap door that I added. Over here is the magic ball. And just like the magic wand, it too can travel eventually right through the cup. I can also place it into here just like that. Give it a tap and a tap, and just like that, it vanishes from here, and of course ends up right here. Now you want to see that again, and I don't blame you. So the cup goes here, the ball goes here, go tap, tap, tap,